All right, so we are going to continue to see how the Enlightenment affected the development of the United States. And our next person is Jean-Jacques Rousseau, a very, very important figure. You'll hear a lot about him next chapter as we do the French Revolution as well. And Rousseau also believed in the social contract, which you remember that phrase from John Locke. What Rousseau was addressing was, right, how do we figure out what the social contract should be then? Who should figure it out? How do we go about figuring out the process of the social contract, the rules that govern society? Right? So Jean-Jacques Rousseau said that we should be governed by the general will of the people, right? The general will of the people, like majority rules, right? It's kind of the bedrock of democracy, which you can see once again in our government. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving or getting their just powers from the consent of the governed. The people. The people give the government power. Therefore, if the people no longer want that government to have power, it's not going to have power, right? It's ruled by the general will of the people. That'll be a big deal when we get to the French Revolution, a large majority of the population is going to say we don't want a monarchy anymore to have absolute power. Therefore, it shouldn't, because we are the general will of the people. We are the majority. Now, interestingly, even though Jean-Jacques Rousseau is part of the Enlightenment, and one of the main words of the Enlightenment is rationalism, this idea that reason is the source of all knowledge, Rousseau argued that emotion is an equally valid source of knowing and knowledge as well. He's not saying ignore reason. He's saying in certain circumstances, at times, you need to embrace your emotions as well. That is a valid source of knowledge. That is a valid source of knowing. That is a valid guide to your life. So even though he is part of the Enlightenment, which was hyper rational near the end of the Enlightenment, you see people kind of swerving away from pure rationalism and moving over to it's believed that emotion was a valid source of knowing and knowledge as well. So if you can kind of review all the different ways the Enlightenment affected the United States, right? The three branches of government, separation of powers, religious freedom, no torture, right? Equality under the law, right? Innocent until proven guilty, freedom of speech and press, social contract, laissez-faire economic theory, right? So all these ideas that we consider American aren't necessarily American, they're Enlightenment. Most of them are French ideas with a sprinkling of English ideas as well. So you could easily argue that without the Enlightenment, you would not have the United States as it currently exists. So all these guys that we talked about, like Montesquieu and Voltaire and Rousseau and John Locke and Beccaria and Adam Smith, right? They're amazingly important for the development of our country. Now, we're going to shift gears a little bit here, and we're going to talk about how the Enlightenment begins to influence women as well. There was an Enlightenment philosopher named Mary Wollstonecraft. And Mary Wollstonecraft, right, she's going to be a leading voice in feminism, the struggle for women's rights during this time period. And she's going to use reason to defend the rights of women, which is very logical, it's very enlightened of her. And her argument is simple. She said, right, the Enlightenment says all humans have reason. That's the foundation of the Enlightenment, that all humans have reason. Men are human, well, women are also human. If men are human, men have reason. Well, if women are human, then they have reason as well. If men can learn, women can learn. And if you educate both, right, you create a better society, right, which is very logical, very rational. She even argued in her writings that if you educate both, you end up with better families and better marriages as well, if both partners in the marriage are educated and have equal rights. So she said, men try to render us alluring objects for a moment, and women intoxicated by the adoration which men under the influence of their senses pay them do not seek to obtain a more durable interest in their hearts. What she means by that is men want women just to be objects, and women who are so obsessed with getting the attention of the men let it happen instead of seeking things that last, like self-worth and self-value and self-dignity and education. She said gentleness, docility, and a spaniel-like affection are on this ground consistently recommended as the cardinal virtues of the sex for females. She was created to be the toy of man, his rattle, and it must jingle in his ears whenever dismissing reason he chooses to be amused. Once again, she's arguing that men have made women nothing but objects, and women allow it to happen. Fragile in every sense of the word, they are obliged to look up to man for every comfort. In the most trifling danger, they cling to their support with parasitical tenacity, demanding succor, and their natural protector extends his arm or lifts up his voice to guard the lovely trembler, that'd be the woman, from what? Perhaps the frown of an old cow, mean old woman, or the jump of a mouse. A rat would be a serious danger. In the name of reason and even common sense, what can save such beings from contempt, even though they be soft and fair? And once again, she's arguing to women as well. You have let them do this to you because you want their attention, right? Because society demands that you want their attention. You allow them, right, to put you into a position of weakness instead of standing up for yourself, instead of protecting yourself, right? Instead of defending yourself, instead of running your life for yourself, right? You just let the man do it because you're so obsessed with their attention and you're not seeking that durable interest in your heart, something that lasts, a virtue, dignity. And once again, all this is very rational, very logical. She argued, she said, if a man only marries a woman because of her looks, what happens as she ages and those looks begin to fade away? What's going to be left of the relationship? She said nothing. But then she argued if they marry each other out of mutual respect for each other, right, as they both age, that affection and that respect will only grow, and you'll have a more lasting marriage and a happier family, which is better for society, which is very reasonable, it's very logical, it's very rational.